a lot of athletes. Okay. I teach a lot of athletes. My most favorite group will be the kindergarten through 5th grade group. I go into the classrooms and I teach them all about yoga, and I teach them yoga poses, but then I also piggyback off of that and I start to dig a little bit deeper and I start to teach them social emotional learning, where now we're not only just talking about our physical and what happens on the outside, now we're also talking about what's happening on the inside. I teach them a lot about how the brain works and operates, the amygdala and that fight, flight, and freeze. I also teach them about the nervous system, the respiratory system, the skeletal system, the muscular system. We talk about breathing. No one ever taught us that breathing was a thing. So now they can learn how to start to self-regulate on their own. My athletes, they come into the classroom, and these are the students that are, like I said before, in underserved areas, and they are, they're living off of their scholarships. So they know that how important it is for them to come into the space and maintain their bodies. So when they're coming in, they're really, really focused on conditioning. So when they come in, they're ready. I have their attention. They have their intention set. They're ready to come onto their mat. 5th through 8th grade. It's a really radical group. Like this, I walk into the classroom and they're just all over the place. Yoga, they're like, what yoga? We've never heard of yoga before. So now with this group, I'm having to deep dive just a little bit deeper, which is very interesting because next week I will travel across the bridge to Arkansas to go into detention centers to with this organization called Prison in the Yoga Program.
Can anyone hear her online?
It seems that they're having a little trouble.
We can't hear. We can see the PowerPoint, but can't hear the speaker.
When did you start doing this? And how did you start?
I actually started in 2020 after I received my yoga teacher certification.
I think so. Okay, yeah, looks like ask. Can you guys hear?
Yes.
Okay, and we're back. So, and I will snap a lot because I work a lot with kids, so I snap them up. And to answer Mary Jo's question, I started in 2020. I actually resigned from Shelby County Schools after 22 years. Wow. Working in IT and finance, and now I just
old enough to.
It's the yoga, correct. So the IT and finance, I had to let that go. That was a little bit much at 43. And so I decided that I wanted to teach yoga, and I knew I didn't want to be like a traditional yoga teacher. I wasn't like a studio yoga teacher. I'm not that person. I'm not that bubbly, especially at 9:30 in the morning. So I wanted to, then I came across a program for kids, and I was very intrigued by it. And just based on me working in the school district for so long, I realized that that was one of the resources and tools that they were not receiving. They were not receiving social emotional learning. Their emotions are all over the place, and they have no idea what to do and how to channel that energy. So I go in, and like I said, I teach them breathing techniques. I teach them how the brain works. I teach them how the respiratory system operates. They do little fun projects for me where we're creating lungs. We talk about the skeletal system. I asked them, I was like, so where are your glutes? They was like, what are those? I was like, your muscles. So, you know, when we were in school, we took health and we learned certain things. They don't have that anymore, which is very unfortunate. So they really do not know how to channel and redirect energy. And for the most part, what has really stood out for me the most, you can go to the next slide if you like. What has really stood out to me the most is the incident where the kid went around the city and was shooting people. And that really bothered me because I have a 22-year-old and I have a 14-year-old, both boys. So this kid who is 19, he falls right in the middle. And then I have to ask myself, okay, so what happened? What went wrong? And we don't really realize that every day we're dealing with trauma, whether it's day-to-day trauma when we're in traffic and someone pisses us off and we want to flip the bird, or if it's trauma that stemmed from our childhood that we're still trying to process and digest, or if it's birth-related trauma, just even coming through the womb, the baby comes out screaming and crying. That's trauma. And then we also have to think about generational trauma, things that happen to us or our parents and our ancestors. And all that plays a part in who we are as a person. And we have to learn how to redirect that energy, because one thing that I have learned is trauma doesn't go away. We're gonna experience trauma every single day. I promise. When I'm on the interstate, I want to curse someone out. And I'm the yoga teacher. But what I have learned is that now, instead of saying, how do we heal from trauma? That's just inevitable. That's really not going to happen. The question is, how do we cope with it? So that's what I do. I go into the schools and I give the students coping skills and the resources and tools that they need in order to learn how to deal and cope with trauma. And these are some of my babies. And we were featured on Good Morning America back in July. They reached out to me. I thought it was a hoax. And they featured some of my students that I've worked with. This summer, I had the opportunity to work with an organization called Foundation Rising. And these are some of their students. And I just thought they were so cute. Some of my students are over at the Bing Dance House. A lot of my students at Southwind High School, a lot of the inner city schools, and you can see they just love me. I have to wear my mask because they give me little cooties. They really like to hug and engage. And then we have some of the other students that I've just worked with just throughout the city. And like I said, I just go from community to community, and I have the opportunity to work with these lovely babies that would not have normally received these services. And they adapt, they love it. Actually, they really do love it. I even think that wonky group, they love it too. They just don't know how to express it. But yeah, and I just love to watch them breathe, and they're just sitting there in crisscross applesauce, and they find their team. So, and that's my email address, my website, if anyone want to check me out. Do I have a few more minutes maybe for questions?
I got a question.
Sure.
What is it that just floats your boat? For me, when people follow my budget plan and it changes their life, I keep control of that and they do it. What is it so satisfying to you to keep on doing this and at a different angle than most people?
The one thing that really got to me when I realized that I was making a difference, because as an entrepreneur, we wake up some mornings, we was like, you know what, I need to get a real job. And so back this past summer, I had one of my students, she reached out to me on Instagram, and she said, Ms. Ford, today is our class day. Do I put my dress on first and then take out my rollers? Or do I take out my rollers and then put on my dress? And the fact, and I had to go in the bathroom and have a moment, but it was the fact that she reached out to me and she had that question, and maybe she felt like I was the only one that could answer that for her. That was it.
Without making fun of her.
Without making fun of her. Yeah. So things like that. And when I see them, and I may have a student that I can tell comes from a very different type of household, and she's there and she's like, the students is in 3rd grade. And I'm like, get what you need then, girlfriend. Take what you need because it's needed. I had one student to come up to me and he said, my mom passed away. And I was like, okay. I was like, I understand. I lost my mom as well. I was like, how are you dealing with that? And he said, well, he said, I see a therapist. And I was like, okay. I saw a therapist once. And I was like, how's it working for you? He was like, oh, I have anxiety. And with that, I was upset. I was really, really upset because either he heard someone say that he had anxiety or someone told him he had anxiety. And what they did, they stamped a big label on his forehead instead of giving him the tools and resources that he needed in order to deal and cope. So it's things like that that just tug at my heart.
I can hear you, anxiety, oh, it's nothing.
I was like, see, this is what, but the thing was, I was like, no, this is what we're not gonna do.
Right.
You don't get to come into this space and act out because you have anxiety. What we're gonna do, we're gonna work on a few things to see how we can help relieve some of the anxiety.
Before he learns to drive.
Absolutely.
Where do you get your funding?
These pockets, so if anyone wants to make a small donation, that would be awesome. But yeah, I pretty much fund it on my own.
So the schools don't pay you?
The schools, they do pay me,
Okay.
so everything I
But
make,
just
I
for the
pretty
time
much,
that you're there?
I pretty
Okay.
much just roll it back into my own.
Okay.
Does this work with adults? I noticed you're doing it. Because we could use that at Talk Shop.
Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't working.
No, this isn't.
Sounds like you need to network with the right people to get you where you need to be.
Yeah.
You need somebody else in your life to help you.
What would, in that
Yeah.
menu between the two of them asking that, what would your ask be? What are you looking, like, if you could wave a magic wand, what would it look like?
So have you visited like other networking groups like this?
I have, and I think for the most part, for the past 3 years, I have been successful. However, it's just being an entrepreneur. It's a lot of work.
You're looking at.
Yeah,
full of-
we're all, that's,
We're
all
all-
of us are pretty
yeah.
much. Yeah. we
It's
get
a
it.
lot of work. It's a lot of effort. Even as far as taking away quality time from my family. I was up at 3 o'clock this morning putting pictures together. Because I had a couple of sessions on yesterday that I had to go and, participate with. And it's just a lot of work. And I think people, they don't take that into consideration, how much work and dedication goes into it. But when you find your niche and when you actually find what you absolutely love doing, like these kids, they deserve it. And just because they can't afford it, it doesn't mean that it should not be available to them. You had a question?
I was a school teacher for 34 years, so I totally understand where you're coming from. How often do you see a particular group? Like, do you go like weekly? Is it after school? Is it during school? And how long is the session for?
Okay, great question. So I have quite a few schools. Some I have that I only see them once a week. So I'm at Booker T. Washington, Manassas, and Cordova Middle. I'm there 1 day a week. I have some schools that like to partner with me or hire me on as part-time, and I'm teaching almost like 14 classes a week, back to back, almost as an enrichment class. So it pretty much kind of depends. But I have found with the schools that I am at, where they want me on site for majority of the day, it probably will work best if I'm only there 1 day and I see a group of students at once. That way I can kind of spread the love throughout the city and I'm just not confined in one space, because I also operate and run my studios on Monday, Fridays, and Saturdays. So I still have to make time for my business, paperwork, and like I said, my family and other different
Do
things.
you go to private schools? Do you have any private
Yes,
schools?
I have St. George's, which I think is off Houston Levy.
Yeah, we live out that way. Yeah.
Are you set up as a charity or are you set up as a?
I'm a for-profit.
Okay.
But you said that, they can't afford it. They can afford the idea that you put in their head,
Absolutely.
and they can now go and practice themselves.
And now they have the resources. Now they know how to start.
Yeah.
They know, I teach them even positive affirmations. One of the biggest things I have found is that our students don't know how to give and receive positive affirmations. So when we talk about crime, I think about the fact that if I don't see value in you, or if I don't see value in myself, then of course I don't see value in you. then of course it's easy for me to walk up to you and pull out a gun on you because I don't see value in myself and I don't see value in you. So until they start to learn those positive affirmations, learn how to look in the mirror and say, I'm awesome, and not be ashamed to say it amongst their peers, and then look at you and say, oh, you're so awesome. Hey, snap you up. That's where it has to start. We have to learn how to start seeing the value in ourselves.
Also, there's that concept of saying, I'm not gonna let you like me. I don't like me, and you're not gonna like me.
And I've had students to say that to me. I mean, they say the weirdest things. And then they come back later and they ask me, affirmation. And I was like, no. And then I say, absolutely you can. You can change anything about yourself. We always have the opportunity to change whatever it is that we don't like about ourselves. Tomorrow's a new day. Just because one day was bad doesn't mean you have a bad life. And we have to learn how to grow from that.
Yeah, feelings are temporary.
Yeah, feelings are definitely
A
temporary.
lot of people don't realize
And they'll
that.
lie to you too.
Yeah.
Yes.
And those big emotions, when those big emotions start to bubble up, our students have to learn how to redirect their energy instead of just riding through the city shooting everybody up. We won't get to do that. You need to learn how to deal with what's going on the inside. And like I said, that's what I have learned. They just don't have the resources. They don't have the knowledge. No one ever taught us breathing was a thing. They come into the class and they're like, Ms. Ford, we're talking about, we're already breathing. I was like, no, I need you to take intentional breaths. In through the nose, sigh it out, let it go. Or even cleansing breaths. We need to go in and out, let it go. And they don't know how to do that. And when I start to explain to them, when we start to hold all of that in, now we're holding in trauma, and now we're allowing things to manifest in our bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that leads to
It builds up pressure.
It builds up our pressure. Now we're starting to develop those cancer cells, and they just don't know how, and it's so unfortunate.
And to breathe deeply gives you more oxygen to the brain.
Absolutely, and the more oxygen you
Better,
receive.
There's another question.
Whatever.
Yeah, I can envision students coming from a traumatic household where they're, constantly around trauma and a lack of education around the practices you're teaching them in the home. They come to your space that's safe. How do you involve the family at all? Is there even potential to do that? So they go home to a place where there's knowledge about that.
One thing that I realized also as I started to teach students, I started during the pandemic. So these students, they were practicing yoga for the very first time via Zoom. And like I said, everyone's household is different. I could look in the background and I can see their backgrounds, and other students could see their backgrounds as well, right? And so one student, their mom may have their station set up just nice and neat, have a desk, pen, pencil, everything. And then one student may have sheets at the back of the wall or to the window, or they may be practicing on a mattress, or they may be in the bathroom because that's the only space that they have available. But oftentimes the parents, they will join in on the practice. They was like, oh, it's yoga time? Okay, let's go. And they will come in and they will participate with the students. But as far as the parents, they've never done it neither. I mean, I am going into deep hoods where I almost have my mace out, I'm ready. But I am going into spaces where they have really been overlooked, underserved, and the crime rate is extremely high. The poverty rate is really, 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 really high. Even just having a mat, I had one school to say, oh, well, our students don't have mats yet. I was like, a lot of my students don't have mats. We just practice on the floor. So that's not an issue. Or I may have someone to say, oh, well, I didn't bring my yoga pants. It's like, a lot of my students don't have yoga pants, and they definitely don't have $100 Lululemon pants. So most of them, they're practicing just in whatever they wore to school, in their school uniform. My husband, he came to one of my sessions on yesterday afternoon. He works for the Grizzlies, and he said, oh, I'm not dressed. And I was like, What I tell you last night. And so, and he showed up and he practiced right along with my students without a mat in his work clothes.
We got a question online, but I don't know if he knows how to unmute himself. It looked like Lynn was trying to, or Troy, are you asking a question? You need to unmute yourself, sir.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, so as you go, there's Lynn, she's got the technical.
There you go. All right.
What do you have for me?
Oh, there we go. Okay,
Yeah.
Miss Ford. Oh, okay. Miss Ford, I was going to ask you a question, you know, with these anxious moments that we all get, whether it be on the interstate driving or in our personal life as we work through the day. You talk about breathing. Can you give us a few little tips as to what you do when you're under that pressure situation, say driving on the expressway and all of a sudden you come upon a real pressure
Little
moment?
lesson.
How do you handle your breathing?
You roll your window down and do what?
I love you.
I promise, I really, really promise that I would love to say that I take a moment and I recenter myself and I take a nice deep big inhale in through the nose
All right, everybody do it.
Do you snap at all?
and exhale and say, fuck. I'll drop the F, but it's refreshing. It's refreshing for me.
Mentioning fudge just makes me hungry.
And I will say that sometimes, but it's coming from my diaphragm and I'm taking that big inhale and I'm exhaling from the gut and I'm letting them have it. Especially those Dodge Chargers, and I don't know if anyone drives them, but they just zoom past you. Yeah, and I'm just, but it's coming definitely from the gut.
Yeah.
Well, let us know how we can share it with our group when we send the information out. If you send us or give us a place that we can donate or somehow we can do that for you.
And there's a link on my website.
Okay.
But like I do receive payments from the schools when I go out and teach. So it's not like the schools, they don't pay, they do. It's just a lot of times, a lot of students, they don't have access to a lot of things. And I do try to provide some of those things for them.
So to clarify, you have a yoga business, but then you go out to the school.
The yoga business, that is my business.
Okay.
So BRWNSKN, the physical address is 1254 East Shelby Drive, 38116. And then, so I'm there, I'm in and out. They see me with my little wagon and they know that I am on a mission. So I take that little wagon all throughout the city with me. So I may have a client and then I may be out of the school serving clients.
Now, how many students do you have in a class? In one class at a time?
Okay, so I have had, for the most part, see that PowerPoint?
Well, he does that. What is the average cost of a yoga mat?
The average cost of a yoga mat, I mean, we can go to 5 and below, $5. We can go to Lululemon or gazillion dollars. I prefer to go to 5 and below. Because that I get more bang for my buck there.
I love the name of your, that's a
Thank you.
great name. And where does one find such things as mats?
Amazon, like anywhere local, even Target, Walmart, a lot of different places.
And you said 5 and below store?
Oh, 5 and below is the yes.
Oh, 5 and below has the mat?
Oh, absolutely.
So if we bought them and gave them to you, would help.
Oh, yeah, that would be amazing.
How many would you say of your students don't have mats?
Okay, so this is my Whitehaven football team here. And so I had yoga rugs, and so we're out on the football field. So you asked how many students, this is the whole football, and this is not even the entire football team. This is just the, I think, star players or the key players. I don't know much about football. This right here, I think this is this class here, this may be, I think that was first grade, first or second grade, but we're just outside and I'm showing them something a little bit different. On the end over here, this is my 5th grade class. We weren't using mats that day because what I noticed is that they would come in and they would have to take off their shoes. It would take like all day. And so at some point I stopped using mats with this group. This is the picture at the top in the middle. That's actually at my studio. And those are mats that Manduka, they donated to me once before. And yeah, and so my students here, they're not using mats. And the ones on the end, I probably just took the mats to them.
Now, I heard that the football team lost every game so far this year. Is that
Well,
true?
I have not been teaching them.
I made it up.
I
I made it up.
Not under my watch, not under my watch. This picture here, these are my students over at South Glen High School, and I would take mats to them for them to use.
Would it be more beneficial just to do a donation, that way you can get the mats?
Oh, sure, absolutely. And of course, my babies here in the middle, my little boys over at John P. Freeman. Yeah, so I was so excited. I just knew that was a hoax. I was reading through my texts and my emails, and I was like, "Good morning, America." I was like, seriously, who wants to interview me? And my husband, he went and Googled it. He was like, yeah, that's legit. So we were very excited. I still think I'm famous to this stuff. But
Thank you so much.
So we have a lot of, there's Kelly Inman online.